Well, good afternoon. This is Jim Whitehead of All Power Group, and today, Phoenix Animal. We're going to talk about, and I always love animals that are smarter than I am. This is Morocco, and they called him the thinking horse, and this horse, we'll go into the whole thing, but this is from London many years ago. The one thing I will have to say, this is kind of spoiler alert, that it doesn't have a happy ending. And I'll be honest, until you get into these and you do the homework and you pull the information, start out saying, and you'll see all the things this wonderful horse would do. But due to the time, and you're talking, 200 years ago, people had funny thoughts related to animals that were smart. Thank goodness in today's world, I think all animals are smart, and in a lot of respects, better than and smarter than we are. But anyway, let me just give you the story of Morocco. Okay, Morocco, known as the thinking horse of London, long before the internet made celebrities out of grumpy cats, a horse in Elizabethan London achieved a level of fame that would rival any modern star of today. His name was Morocco, and to the astonishment of all who saw him, he was an animal that could apparently count, read, and even discern the character of people in a crowd. Morocco was a small bay-colored horse owned and trained by a man named William Banks in the late 16th and early 17th century. So there you go, very long time ago. And again, you're going to have to take into consideration that this animal today would be looked upon differently than, unfortunately, as we progress to the end, that people kind of got creeped out because of this. Anyway, Banks was a showman, and Morocco was his star attraction. They performed in the courtyards of inns in London to captivated audiences. But these were no simple tricks. Morocco's alleged abilities were so profound that many believed he was, here we go, possessed by a spirit, or that Banks practiced sorcery. How would you like that? That's kind of, I know you'd say, well, today they wouldn't look at it that way. They'd look at it differently, I'm sure. Some of Morocco's most famous feats, and you're going to see them as we come along here, included the Morocco mathematical prowess. Banks would ask Morocco to tap his hoof a certain number of times to correspond with the value of a silver coin or the pips on a pair of dice thrown by an audience member. So obviously they definitely tried to have it where, they could demonstrate that this wasn't like, fake, that it was real. So there you see he is counting with his paw. He could supposedly walk through a crowd And again, they'd say, how many numbers? What's the number on it? And he would tap it out with his hoof, which was great, and people were pretty astounded by that. The other thing, he could supposedly walk through a crowd and, with a nudge of his head, identify specific individuals, such as a man with the longest beard, the finest cloak, or, much to the crowd's delight, the biggest cuckold in the room. So yeah, his master would say, "Hey, pick, somebody in the crowd, go to that person if they've got the longest beard or other things that would be where Morocco, it would prove that he definitely knew what he was looking for and found what he was looking for." The ultimate stunt in 1600, Morocco performed his most legendary act. He climbed, this is amazing, he climbed to the very top of the old St. Paul's Cathedral in London, a dizzying feat that was witnessed thousands and cemented his status as a superstar. Anyway, Morocco's fame was so widespread that he often received a mention in William Shakespeare's play by the name of Love's Labour's Lost. The character Moth remarks, "The dancing horse will tell you." So there he is. He was even mentioned in one of Shakespeare's play. He was so famous. However, Morocco's incredible intelligence came at a price. In an age steeped in superstition, such as abilities in an animal were often seen as unnatural and evil. I mean, you don't know me that well, I guess, but I love animals, and I wouldn't ever feel, especially an animal that is doing these nice things, not hurting anybody. It shouldn't be habit where you're fearing that there's something evil. Anyway, after conquering London, and this is probably the biggest mistake Banks made, Banks and Morocco embarked on a tour of Europe. The details of their end are the stuff of legend, but the most persistent story is a tragic one. While traveling in Italy, some accounts say Rome, others Florence, their act attracted the attention of the Inquisition. That's like the government, basically, back then. Anyway, the church authorities, unable to believe a mere animal could perform such intellectual feats, accused Banks of witchcraft and Morocco of being a demonic familiar. According to the tale, both men and horse were condemned as heretics and publicly burned at the stake. I mean, I know it's sad, and again, I even debated whether I was going to do this because, again, I have a tendency not to like I dislike unhappy endings. But my doing it or not doing it, I admit, doesn't change the outcome, and it really brings an animal that was just wonderful and smart and did the very best they could for their owner. And again, here we go. Banks, they're saying he must be a sorcery. He can make this horse do things, and it's unearthly, and we're going to punish them. That's sad. So, as you can see, everything was fine until this. So, the bottom line, it's sad, but it's a true story. So, it's what we say it is, and as you can tell, I'm still having a hard time with this, even though it happened. It's real, and people were not worldly enough to recognize that an animal could have such skills and that it wasn't the devil. But that's just the way it is. Today, Morocco, the thinking horse, is all but forgotten. A curious footnote in the Elizabethan history. But in his time, he was a genuine phenomenon, a four-legged celebrity whose astounding talents thrilled a nation before ultimately leading him to a grim and fiery end. I hope you don't mind. And the sad thing, when they say that he's just a footnote in history, and it's all because, again, back then they just didn't believe that an animal would have smarts. Because, they would say, well, we ride horses. The horses, we kick them with our, whatever we have on our boots or whatever, and they kind of do what we tell them to do or direct them to do, and they never would feel that an animal could have these skills. The other side of the coin, if he didn't get trained by Banks, he wouldn't have done any of this stuff. So it's just, when you get into an end story like this, and the sad point of people just saying this animal can't be normal, and that his owner did something very nefarious. So, anyway, I want to thank you for being here today. And, I have the fun pleasure of doing my animal stories and also coffee. And I have two separate channels, and we're working on both of them, which is great. Animals are wonderful, and I wish everybody else acted like animals sometimes, because they're honest, they're unique. In most cases, unless they're brought up in a very bad way, they go along and help, and they love you. And, I have Jamie, my Shih Tzu. She's 10 years old. I just can't tell you how much I love her, more than I can say. And every day I pray that she's going to be with us for hopefully a much longer time than where she is now. And that's 10 years. But unfortunately, animals, as you know, have relatively short life expectancies, instead of living as long as humans do. So anyway, thank you for allowing me to share Morocco's story. And again, thank you very much. Again, take care and be well, and thank you again.